Alright, welcome to Making Logging Map Part 2. Today we're going to look at importing, exporting from other maps or importing objects you've downloaded off the internet. And then we're also going to look at terrain editing as to how to get your map, the mountains and valleys and ponds and all that stuff, and how to do all that. So let's just kind of get right into it. Alright, so like we talked about last time, I'm going to take just a small little section of the map and we're going to actually build a working logging map just from this little small section right here that I've got defined by the terrain sort of wall there. Alright, so the first thing though is what I like to do whenever I'm starting off a logging map is, now most of the time here lately I've been using my tutorial that I did, how to add real world terrain data to your map. So I kind of have an idea of where the mountains or hills are, where the streams or rivers, lakes, whatever's in there, roads even, if you can see those, if you have like really good high resolution DEM, sometimes you can even see the roads on there, so you can kind of get an idea. And especially if you have like an idea of you want to use a specific area, maybe it's got a town, some roads leading to it, and maybe there's a sawmill next to a river or whatever, you already sort of have an idea. But the most basic thing is, for me, I like to figure out, I kind of tend to start with the sawmill because that's sort of the heart of a logging map. And so that's where I usually start. And I think this time what we're going to do is, I guess I should kind of back up a little bit. In the last video I didn't really talk too much about how to move around in the map. I forgot to put that part in there. So, okay, so the most basic thing is, and I guess it depends on your setup too, but for me, I've got a mouse with a mouse wheel. So if I move my mouse wheel towards me, it zooms out. And if I move the mouse wheel away from me, it zooms in. If you right click the mouse and move it while you're holding it down, it'll move it anywhere, up and down, left, right, but you notice we're kind of staying in the same spot. Now to move side to side, I hold down the Alt key on my keyboard and press the middle mouse button, hold it down while I'm dragging. You can see I can move, kind of pan left and right. I can go up and down sort of, but I can't go like look to my left or look to my right. It just sort of, and you can just do that click and click click, and it moves. And still use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out, and still use the now when you're holding down the Alt key, the left mouse makes you look left and right and up and down like that. And then I guess I should mention one other thing too. Over in the bottom right hand corner, the very bottom right hand corner, there's a nav speed. Right now it says 81. If you want to change that, what that is when I hold down the Alt key and I right click and I move the mouse away from me, you see how fast we're zooming in and zooming out? Well, if I change the nav speed, let's drop it way down to like say 10. Alright, now watch whenever I move, see how slow it goes. So you can really do some fine detail navigation with that setting there, and that's only really for panning like this, zooming using the Alt key and right click in, out, away from you, and then the mouse, the mouse wheel too. So that's what that's for. Now when you look left and right, see it's still super fast, but that's just if you want to, like say if I want to go work on something all the way in this other corner of the map, I would want to move this nav speed up super high so I can get over there quickly, and then bump it back down so I can manipulate the views in a more precise fashion, more precise. Okay, so now that we kind of know where our area is, the next thing we need to figure out is adding some buildings and stuff. Like I said, I tend to start with the sawmill because that's sort of the heart of it, and once I get the sawmill built, I can kind of see where the roads need to be and all that kind of stuff. So what I like to do is start with the sawmill. So let's get some buildings. The first thing we're going to look at is importing and exporting things. And so I've got Ravenport open here, and let's see, The sawmill, let's see, yeah, sawmill's right over here. Now this building right here, everybody kind of tends to use this as their sawmill. So let's just grab this. All right, so I clicked on it one time, and you have to make sure, like I mentioned in the last video, I think I mentioned this maybe, but you have to make sure that you're on the top level of whatever you're wanting to do. So like if I clicked on this LOD 0 for some reason and exported it, it's not going to get everything, because we wouldn't have gotten this other part here, which is important. But see, this transform group right here contains both of these, so we need to make sure we're clicking on the top level. Alright, now to export this, what I do is, once it's highlighted in the scene graph, you know that you're on the top level of that building or whatever, tree, you know, rock, whatever. Then come up here to File, and I usually do export selection with files. I'm not sure if this is still the same from 17, because the reason I say this is in 17 I know you know, there was texture files that were in different places and stuff, and so whenever you told it export selection with files, it grabbed them all. If they were in folders, it grabbed the folders and it sticks them you know, wherever you tell it to put it. Now the export selection, since this is a stock map, we may have, let's just try this and see, because with the stock maps, it's probably okay to just use export selection. If you're using some other map to download stuff, then you might want to use export selection with files. But, and the reason I say that is because export selection, since it's using the stock data and it's going to be pulling from there anyway. Remember the $ data in the last video? I think we'll be okay to just use export selection. So again, where you're going to export it to, remember I talked about in the last video how you got your blank map under your mods folder, then you got your maps folder, and under there's imports. Now I've already dumped a bunch of stuff in here, but I'm going to go ahead and put, yeah, I've got it already. I've already got it in here, but let's just call it Debarker Hall 2, just to name it something different. And like I said, I tend to try to stick with the same naming structure as what they already had over here in Ravenport, just to make sure it's all the same. Because if I need to refer back to this Ravenport map, I'll know what that building is called. So then, if I had called it something different, then I would have to hunt it down. Okay, so we did that, exported it out to your imports folder. I know it's kind of weird, export to the imports folder, but that's, you know, that's what I call it. You call it, you don't have to call it imports, you can call it something different, but whatever you know, that folder is all of the exported objects from other maps or downloads or whatever. And now I guess also in the form of downloads. Okay, so let's say you find some sort of a building or some other object that you found on a mod site. There's lots of mod sites out there that have objects, also called prefabs. Maybe it's just under buildings or something like that, but some object that you found out there you want to put in your map. Okay, so what I do is I just downloaded a file. It's a silos, bunker silos or whatever, for using for, like, you know, wood chip storage or whatever you want to do with it. So what I did, I'm gonna paste this in here. Okay, so there it is right there. It's in the zip form right now. So remember from the last video, we're gonna right click on it. If you've installed 7-zip, you should have an option here for 7-zip, and then I'm gonna extract it to the FS19 bunker silo pack folder. That's what that means right here. Alright, so now it's in a folder, so actually what we can do is come back here, select just the zip, and we can delete that because we don't need it anymore. We've already unzipped it. Okay, so there's our folder with the bunker silo pack, and that's how I would do that, because I would put it in my imports folder. That way you know where it's at, and we can, you know, that if we don't use it when we get ready to export the whole map to zip it up to be a working copy of the map, then it'll delete this if we don't use it. So let's just go ahead, we'll double click on that. Now you can see there's a bunch of files in here, DDS files, diffuse, normal, specular, all this stuff in here. I'm not really sure what a lot of that means, or you won't have to worry about it too much. But here's the i3D files. We got a big, a medium, and a small. Again, these are silo bunkers. But so that's how I do that. Is I download them and stick the zip file in this imports folder here, and then I unzip it, delete the zip, and that way I've got all the files in there in my map. I don't have to worry about going to the desktop or going to some other folder and hunting them down, and then got to worry about, you know, when you get ready to export it, are all the textures going to come, and you know, that kind of stuff. They're already in here, so that's just an easier way of doing it. Alright, so we've looked at exporting a file or a building out of the stock Ravenport maps. We got it now in our imports folder. Now let's go back over here to our blank map, and let's go ahead and just plop down this sawmill building, and I want to see what happens. Okay, so to import the building or any other object, go to File and then Import, and now it automatically popped up to this imports folder under our blank map, but if it didn't, you just have to navigate to it. Alright, so that was Debarker Hall 2. I had already had the Hall R in there, so this is the one we just exported from Ravenport. So I want to see, I clicked on it, highlight it, see it's there in the file name, and let's open it. Okay, so it's not where we want it, so we need to place it here. Now the quickest way of doing that, I mean, you could, you know, find wherever it's at, see it's way over there. You could use these little arrows and move it over here, but it'll take forever. So what I do is, see it's still highlighted in the scene graph. Now on your keyboard, press the keys Control and B. B as in boy. You don't have to hold it down or nothing, just Control B, right, like that, and then wherever you left click, it's going to plop it down. See, there it is. All right, and it looks like everything came over okay. And you can see down here in the console area at the very bottom where it says, you know, right here, maps, imports, Debarker Hall 2. So it didn't give me any warnings or errors, so I think everything's okay. So it looks like if you're using the stock map, then just exporting the selection with files is going to be the way to go. Or exporting the selection, you don't have to use the export with files. Okay, so we got it. Now, if you don't like where it put it, because see the wood chips are over here, you know, so maybe you want it rotated 90 degrees or something. Again, click on it, make sure that the whole thing's selected, the topmost transform group is selected. Now, you can use these, you see when I mouse over this little green circular thing, if I mouse over that and it turns yellow, I can left click and I can rotate it like this. I can rotate it however I want to, and that rotates it on the Y axis, it looks like, because it's moving the most over there in the scene graph or the attributes window. Okay, so let's say I want it right there. Alright, but now let's say that you want it to be exactly 90 degrees or exactly 0, 180, whatever, because you want to make sure that you're, you know, it's just easier to me to work north, south, east, west, just because the textures all sort of line up good. And what I mean by that is, if I click on this terrain detail texture paint mode, the second button up here, and if I were to come down and change this to square, and let's say I wanted asphalt here, so I'm going to come down to my terrain editing texture layer, and I'm going to find asphalt. There it is. Alright, so you see my square. If I were to try, I'll try to paint this perfectly straight. Alright, there we go. So you see my sawmill doesn't quite really line up with my texture I just painted there. So what you can do is, what I do is, I'll highlight this green circular rotation thing, and I'll kind of get it close, and I'll see, you know, like right there is pretty close. But alright, so if you notice, we've been rotating on the Y axis, so it says 0.271. I want it to be exactly 0, just so I know I'm north, south, east, west. So I'm just going to type in a 0, hit enter. You know, I think if you just type in 0, it automatically rotates it. But now if I wanted it rotated 90 degrees, then I could type in 90. You see it flips it over there. or if I wanted it completely, you know, the other way, you could type in 180, but I think 0 is going to be the way to go. That way we can have our logs over here on the right side and our wood chips over here on the left. Alright. And you know, the same goes with all the other objects. Just do the same thing. If you want to go grab them from Ravenport or Felsbrunn or wherever, just go over there, export them out, export the selection, and then stick it in that imports folder. And then when we get it in here, you're going to import it by going to File, Import, and then you'll use Control B once it gets in there to plop it down, you know, wherever you want it to go. Then use your rotation to rotate it. Now, if we decide to change the height of the terrain and you want to move it up or down, and you can click this, highlight this little green arrow until it turns yellow. Then you can move the whole thing up and down like that. See, and then if you decide, oh, well, maybe it's better the way it was, come back up here to the undo. It puts it back on the ground. Or if you've got it up in the air like this, again, while it's still selected in the, or highlighted in the scene graph, you can hit Control B again and then move it around wherever you want to, let go, and it's there. It puts it on the terrain at terrain height. Okay, so let's get some more objects in here really quickly. And I think I want to let's just illustrate a point here. I want to show you something about when you're importing objects and making copies and stuff like that. So let's import, let's see, let's just go ahead and do a pine tree. Let's do a pine stage 3. So let's get that in here. Okay, now a word about trees, and we're going to get into actually placing trees quickly in another video, but just for the sake of this little tutorial, let's go ahead and let's talk about making a transform group and putting all the trees under it. That way we don't have a whole string of, you know, trees and the scene graph will get huge. Alright, so what I like to do is I like to go to create and transform group, and see it sticks at the very bottom. Always come at the very bottom, no matter where you are or what you're in. If you're, you know, 2 or 3 deep in here, clicking there, it's always going to put it at the very bottom. And so I'm going to rename this to trees. So while it's highlighted, come over here to your attributes panel, and it should say right here transform. We're just going to type in trees and hit enter, and then it renames that transform group we just made to trees. Alright, now and we'll get into the little script that I have as to how to rename this later, but this is maybe if you don't want to use the script, which I would recommend the script though, but we'll talk about that in another video. So so I want to put this pine stage 3 inside this trees transform group. That way when we collapse it, you know, we won't have a whole long list of all these pine stage 3s and 4s and whatever we add in here. So while pine stage 3 is highlighted on my keyboard, I'm going to go Control X. You can also go to Edit and Cut, but for this one I like to use Control X. See, it made it go away. And now we click on this trees transform group and hit Control V to paste, and see it stuck it in there. That way when we start making a whole bunch of trees, we can collapse this and it kind of cleans up the scene graph, so we don't have a big long list of trees listed there, or rocks, or, you know, whatever you've got in there. Okay, so again, you know, where'd the tree go? And see, it stuck it way over there. So I'm going to hit Control B and left click, and while you're holding it down you can move it around and wherever, and then I'm going to unclick my left mouse button and it sticks the tree right there. It's still highlighted, all that good stuff. Now what I like to do to unselect stuff is just, you'll see me occasionally pan up here into the sky somewhere and click, and that way it deselects everything. But that's how to get a tree in here. Alright, now let's talk about making copies of this tree, because that's going to be important. But like I said, in a future video we're going to talk about the script that I have by Catalyzer Gaming, and I'm hoping that with his permission I can, you know, share that script out. I think he's sort of made it public, so it shouldn't be a problem, but I'll check with him just to make sure. But okay, so let's say we want to make a bunch of copies of these just around the sawmill. We're gonna, just hand place a few. All right, so when you click on it and select it, or you could have come over here and highlighted it here, but let's say we want to make a bunch of copies of this. All right, so on my keyboard, I'm gonna go Control D. That's D as in dog. Control D, and you notice I just clicked one time. Control D. You don't have to hold it or anything. Now I can grab one of these, directional arrows, either the red or the blue, because the green is straight up. We won't need a tree to go up unless we're going up a hill or something. But let's say we're still on the flat ground, so let's just say we want to make it, a line of trees right here. So I'm going to highlight one of these arrows and just drag, and see it was already on top of it, and now we've got it over here. Alright, now a quicker way of doing that is if we do, while a tree over here is highlighted, if we do Control D and then do Control B as in boy, now when we left click and not let go, we've got control over this. Okay, so again, you can just let go and we've made a copy and moved it to where we wanted to, but let's say you want to make a bunch of them in a row. So again, do Control D, then Control B, hold down your left mouse button. Now on the keyboard, click Shift, and every time you click Shift, it's going to place a tree. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. I just let go right there. Okay, now the thing about this though, doing the shift, is if you notice this limb, that limb, that one, and they're all perfectly rotated exactly the same. In fact, if I click on this one and I come over here, you see the rotate is X is 0, Y is negative 72.512, and then 0. Watch if I click on this one. See, it's the same thing. It's the exact same. The rotation's all the same on those. Now to change it, of course, we could come down here and rotate this one around, and then maybe we're going to rotate that one around just to give it a more natural feel. Because, like for instance, on the plantation map, if I had placed all those trees exactly the same, it looked kind of funny. It wouldn't look quite natural. Now, all right, now, so to make it be a bit more natural, we're going to do Control D as in dog, Control B as in boy, and I'm going to left click, and this time instead of hitting Shift on the keyboard, I'm going to hit Control. And what Control does is every time you hit Control, just like we did with Shift, it places the tree, but it rotates it at a random angle. All right, so Control, 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 and then I'm going to let go. So now we're starting to make us a little rows of trees. But if you look, this first one is, look at the rotation right here. This 180, 49.351, negative 180. Now look at this one, 250.583, 158.371. So you can see it rotates it along the y-axis just so they're kind of random, and then they're not all uniform, look just exactly the same. Alright, okay, so now you know how to import and export and rotate and then make copies. Now what I want to move into right now is the terrain, and we're going to look at a few terrain things. So let's get over here in a flat spot so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so like we talked about in the last video, this first button right here is the terrain sculpt mode. So if you're not using a real world terrain, or maybe you've imported the DEM from another map or something, if you just want to start from scratch, then I would recommend not using square but using round. Okay, so again, click the first button. You see the circle, the red circle with the red and white stick appears. That way you know you're in this terrain editing or sculpt mode, whatever they call it. And again, down at the bottom, left mouse button is add, middle mouse button is smooth. You can change all these to whatever, and then right mouse button, usually I'll just leave that on subtract. So to start sculpting the terrain, what I'm going to do is let's say I wanted to have a little hill over here, and I've got that value set kind of high. It's at 2 right now. I would probably, well, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to make something really big, then I'd bump that up to 10 or 20 or whatever. But and then if you just want to do some fine work, you can change that to like say 0.05. You see whenever I start to sculpt now, it's kind of, it goes a little slower. Okay, and I did play around a little bit with this hardness right here, and what that does is you can't change it any more than 1. So like say if I would change it to 0.01, watch whenever I click one time. You see it's just kind of bumps up right in the middle only. You see right there, it just kind of bumps in the middle. If I change this back to a 1, watch this. I'm gonna hold and kind of, you see how it kind of, this is more of a I guess we could call it a pointier hill, and where this is more of a flatter top to it. So it kind of, you can kind of play around with some of these settings, but it really does make a difference. And so we'll go back to 0.01 and I'll make another one right there. You see how it just kind of raises up right in the middle versus all around the radius of the circle? Okay. And again, the middle mouse button is smooth. So let's say I wanted to have a few little hills over here. I can then come in and smooth it out. I'm just middle mouse button clicking down and moving my mouse around to kind of start to smooth some of that out. And again, you just kind of have to get in here and start playing around and get a feel for it. But alright, that's how you do the terrain. Now, I think we touched briefly on the replace in the last video, but usually I like to set this on my right mouse button. I'll set that to replace, and right now I've got it set to where we're at the height of this terrain over here, under where the sawmill is. So if I right click, now that I've got replace selected, it puts the terrain at whatever level you have right here in this value. So if I right click, you see we're back to flat again where we were originally. Alright, now let's say that we knew we wanted to have this height, let's say 3 meters higher than what we have over here where the sawmill's at. Okay, so 58 and 3, and we're just going to round it off. Well, let's make that 61. So you can just type it in there. And now when we right click, you see it only goes up 3 meters. So it's pretty handy for, like say if you wanted to have an upper tier of this sawmill, you can replace it with say a 3 meter height increase, and then come back and smooth it to make a little entrance, from the sawmill up to this higher elevation area. So that's kind of handy. Alright, now let's say for some reason we knew that we wanted the terrain to be at the height of this right here. Well, we don't really know what that is because we just sort of randomly made this height, Alright, so what you can do is if on the keyboard you press Control R, and you notice the replace over here change from 61 to 82.153. What that means is now when we right click to replace, we're going to be at the very top of this wherever we put it. See it smooths it out to the top right there. And that's how you can do that if you don't know what the height was, but you want to use the height of something else. So real quickly again, while my stick is right there where I want the height to be, Control R, it will change the replace, and then now we're at the same height we were when we did the Control R. So you can see we're starting to kind of make some cliffs and some little, maybe that's a road or whatever. But anyway, again, just get in there and play around and see what some of these settings and stuff do. Okay, now let's say we wanted this to be not really a cliff, but maybe sort of a rough mountain or something. Okay, so we still got our left mouse button set to add, and let's say we want to make it really rough and just sort of a jagged mountain type area. Okay, so scroll all the way down to the bottom until you see noise, and click the little black arrow to drop down the noise options, and we're going to select enable noise. And what this does is whenever you left click, it adds just sort of a random pattern to it. You see how we're kind of making the little jagged whatevers, and again you can kind of play with some of the settings in here, the frequency and the octaves. The octaves do make a difference. If we set it to 4, you know, it's maybe not quite as rough as 8 was. And I think these persistence and frequency, just some little extra little deals in there. And this random seed, you can click that and it resets this, I think. Yeah, see, it reset it to, and it just kind of gives it a more of a randomness to it. So you see we're starting to make some really jagged mountain type looking areas, and so that's some techniques I've used on I believe Bear Rock and yeah, this upcoming map, the Ransom Ridge. I've used that before just to kind of give some randomness and make some kind of mountainous looking areas. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about with the terrain sculpting stuff is I want to show you how to make, like, say we want to make a road that starts at the bottom and then slopes up to the top up here at the very top. So I'm going to uncheck this enable noise, otherwise it'll mess us up. Okay, so again we're going to do the replace thing where we do the Control R because I want to get the height of this. So while my stick at the top, Control R, and okay, so it's 79.149. Now what I like to do, again, it just kind of depends on, you know, what you've done as far as the terrain and stuff, but what I like to do is I like to go ahead and just like say we're making a road. Oops, I messed up. I didn't do replace. Okay, so undo. Now right click to replace, and let's say I want to make a road that comes out this way that slopes up to meet the very top of this. Alright, so I'm gonna come on out here a little bit so we're not going up too steep. Alright, so right about there. Alright, so you see we've got a pretty long little section there, and this is just my method. You can build it up from the bottom. I like to kind of, and like I said, it just depends on what I'm doing. If I've already got a terrain that's popped in there that I'm trying to, you know, go up the side of a hill that's already formed, then I use a little bit different method, but I like to call this the stair step method. Alright, so at the very bottom we knew it was 58 point something, so again Control R while my stick is on the very bottom, and we're at 58.268. Okay, so we know that that's bottom. Alright, so what I like to do to give a nice kind of smooth transition from the bottom to the top is I like to go 1 meter at a time. So I'm just going to round this off to 59, type in 59, and then I'm going to right click to get the terrain back down. You see, you can kind of see it barely, it's just barely, see above right there, kind of smooth that out. Alright, now again we're just going to kind of build a stair step, so I'm going to go up to 60 and put in the next stair step. So you can see we're kind of starting to make like a little stair kind of thing. So then we're going to go 61. Now if you want to go up a little bit steeper, I wouldn't go any more than probably 2 or 3 meters at a time. And then we're going to go 62. And we're just going to continue up. And if you start to see that we're going to come up a little short, which it kind of looks like we are, maybe, you might want to bump that up to like say 2. So let's go 65, kind of start to climb a little steeper. Yeah, I think we're going to what, 60 or 79, so 67. I may not have come out far enough. 69, 71. Yeah, we're getting there. Okay, 73. $75, and then 77, and then 79. We should be at the very top. All right, so we got this sort of a stair step looking thing. And again, we probably would have, you know, some other terrain that was more of a hill kind of thing, side of a mountain or whatever. But now to get this nice smooth road, we're just going to use the smooth option. And what I like to do is, when I build the stairs, I'm a little bit wider than I want to be. I do that on purpose, because if I made it exactly, let's say if I wanted the road to be 5 meters across, so I'll start my stair step with this radius of this circle at 5 meters, and then I come back with the smooth technique. Then what it'll do is it'll start to do this number, and you'll sort of get some weird stuff at the edges. So I come back and I make my radius just a little bit smaller, not much, just a little. So I say we were at 5, I might go to 4, I might go 3.5, you know, something like that. And then you just take the left mouse button, and we're going to start anywhere really, but you know, start the bottom or whatever for here, and we're just going to do the smooth. So click the middle mouse button and just drag your mouse up, and then kind of, you know, smooth all them stair steps out. And then we come up this way and kind of smooth it out. You just kind of have to get a feel for it and play with it. If you get too close to the edge, it'll do some weird stuff, especially if, say, we had big cliff sides that came up the sides right here, and you kind of see these little spikes. You can kind of bump those a little bit. You got to be a little bit careful, because it'll start to take away your sides of your road. But you can see we kind of made a pretty nice little smooth ramp to go, or road to go up the side of this thing here. And you just kind of have to fine tune it, you know, come in and smooth out some more sections and whatever. But see right here, like I was talking about, if you get too close to the edge and it's a drop off, then it'll start taking away some of your road sections, see, like that. So you just have to be careful not to do that. But anyway, that's how you make that. And of course, if you're going up at a curve or whatever, you know, you just have to kind of work at it, manipulate it until you get it looking just right. And if you decide that you've, you know, like over here, if you come too far, too close to the edge, what I like to do is I'll make my circle real small like this, and just use the left mouse button to start to add it back just a little bit at a time until you get it up to the level, maybe even a little bit higher. Something like, you know, just, I'm just going to exaggerate a little bit, but something like that. Then you can expand your radius back out just a little bit. Use the middle mouse button to start to kind of build that back up. But again, you just have to get in there and play with it and get a feel for it. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this video, and next time I think we're going to actually start putting on some textures and kind of start building the map. And then maybe we'll get into the tree placement script or something, but I'll have it figured out for next time. So until then, just get in there, play around, export some stuff, import some things. You know, use the Control D to make copies and move them around. Do the control button while you're holding down the copied to make the different rotations, and then play with your terrain a little bit to see kind of how all that works. And then we'll see you next time. So thanks for watching.